This case takes place in the UK in the year 2023. What should have been a normal day in the busy centre of Cuddon rapidly turned into a nightmare. Teenagers were walking through the busy streets, laughing and talking, completely unconscious of the terrifying disaster that was close by. Their peaceful morning would be over in a flash, overtaken by shouts, mayhem, and bloodshed. On June 28, 2008, Elianne Andam was born. Her father published Christian teaching materials, while her mother worked for the NHS. Both parents were very committed in their church in Cuddon, which provided Elianne with a pious and nurturing upbringing. People often said that she was the best thing that had happened to her parents. Elianne was full of energy from an early age. She sang and danced with excitement all the time. Family and friends remember her as kind, giving, smart, and very loved. By the time Elianne was 15, she had matured into a devoted, confident, and well-rounded young woman. She was getting ready to take her levels in law because she wanted to be a human rights lawyer. Her future was bright, and nothing seemed capable of stopping her. But no one could have known how bad things were about to get for her. Elianne's best friend, whose name should remain nameless, had started dating a boy from Cuddon College named Hassan Said Tanmo. He was slightly older than she was, and their relationship seemed to enjoy a summer of romance, but it suddenly turned stormy. Hassan abruptly ended the relationship via a text message, bluntly telling his girlfriend, "Your energy is dead. I'm not for a relationship. All the best." From that moment on, he grew increasingly nasty, even when she just requested for her stuff back. In one exchange, he mocked her desire to retrieve a cherished teddy bear that she had left at his house, saying he would never bring it to her and that she was wasting his time over, "Dumb little teddy." Elianne's friend had no way of knowing the type of person she was dealing with. Hassan was incredibly dangerous. At that time, few realized the extent of his dark mind, except for one other person, his pal. Around this period, Hassan sent several chilling messages to a close friend, stating, "Whenever you see me, it's never really me. It's a persona I put on. The real me is evil, dark, and miserable." He went on to brag, "I can break people physically and mentally." Unfortunately for Elianne, these words were not idle. He was telling the truth. On Wednesday, the 27th of September, 2023, Elianne and her best friends began their day like any other school day. This time, however, one of Elianne's friends had agreed to meet Hassan before school to exchange their possessions. Finally, he had consented to return her items. Elianne and another girl accompanied their pal for solidarity and support. The deal was meant to be simple, her teddy bear for his tracksuit and other stuff. However, it did not play out as expected. Initially, the meeting was rather pleasant. Hassan and Elianne's buddy met in a car park, where she kept her promise and folded his clothing neatly into a bag before passing it off. Hassan arrived with a friend and greeted the girls with a smile that barely covered his genuine intentions. However, it didn't take long for the truth to surface. Hassan showed up empty-handed. There was no teddy bear, as promised, nothing was offered in exchange. Instead, something was concealed inside his sweatshirt, something he had no intention of disclosing. Hassan brushed off the girls' objections as if they were nothing and strolled away with his bag of clothing. He felt pleased of himself for outsmarting the three girls. Elianne had always been one to stand up for what she believed was right, and she never backed down from a fight, especially when it included her friends. Her desire of becoming a human rights lawyer was not just rhetoric, she actually cared about people. Thus, she was not ready to let Hassan take advantage of her best friend without a struggle. At around 8:30 in the morning, Elianne began recording a Snapchat story to describe what had transpired as she moved fast behind Hassan. Moments later, she bridged the gap and, without Hassan knowing, took the bag from his grasp. At first, there was laughter. It felt like a game, a minor victory for the girls. But the mood suddenly flipped. Hassan turned and saw what she had done, and his face twisted with wrath. Without warning, Hassan raced toward her. He felt embarrassed and humiliated, something that every narcissist despises. Worst of all, he had been made a fool by a female, and he was determined not to let her get away with it. CCTV caught the two rushing down the road, Elianne hugging the bag securely to her chest while Hassan gripped a 12-inch kitchen knife, the object he had hidden up his hoodie all along. Hassan managed to catch up to Elianne, but instead of just stopping her and returning his belongings, he did the unimaginable. He drew out his knife and stabbed the blade deep into Elianne's neck. The knife tore a 12-centimeter slit through her flesh, severing the carotid artery in a single savage hit. Elianne collapsed to the ground, looking towards Hassan with her face twisted in shock and misery. It was at this point that she began to beg for her life, but her cries fell on deaf ears. Hassan pushed the blade into her again and again, and it is thought that he stabbed her over 10 times, doing so with ferocious fury. Bystanders who watched the horrifying attack begged for him to stop, but Hassan only looked up, his expression blank, before escaping on foot, still brandishing the huge knife. A bus driver abandoned his car and ran to Elianne's side, anxiously trying to save her. Tragically, his endeavors were useless. The blood loss Elianne experienced was devastating. Witnesses nearby recounted seeing her outfit become red within minutes. Elianne was dead. Paramedics and the police soon arrived on the site, and an investigation was set to commence. So, who precisely was Hassan, and why did he unleash such a horrific and mindless act of violence over something so trivial? This terrible murder originated from a quarrel over a bag of clothing. Hassan was born on the 6th of September, 2006, in Uganda. His early life was blighted by violence. His parents' marriage was damaged by significant marital troubles. His father faced significant claims of abuse, and when Hassan was just 3 years old, his mother escaped with him to London. They landed in Cuddon, South London, where Hassan was raised in a small single-parent household alongside his 3 sisters. His early years were frigid and chaotic, lacking order and care. According to him, he grew up furious. His foul wrath emerged in sudden bursts of aggression, lashing out at his mother, sisters, and fellow learners. Teachers soon identified the trauma hiding beneath his demeanor and referred him to child mental health services, but little changed. By 2018, Hassan's aggression had risen beyond what his suffering mother could control. At the age of 11, she decided that the cure was not therapy but exile. She sent him back to a boarding school in Uganda, expecting that discipline would tame him. Instead, this encounter seemed to damage him further. At the boarding school, Hassan underwent horrific physical abuse. He was beaten with metal rods by those who were sworn to protect him. It was stated that on one occasion, he slid down a stairway while rushing to escape a further thrashing. By April of 2018, Hassan returned to Britain, and according to those who knew him, he was a shadow of his former self, traumatized and damaged. Upon his return to the UK, he was pushed into secondary school midway through the academic year. Here, the fissures began to deepen. In one horrifying occasion, Hassan pulled out a knife during class and threatened to use it. This conduct outraged both teachers and pupils, leading to police intervention. He was cautioned, but nothing changed. Over the months and years that followed, Hassan's aggression became increasingly unpredictable. Minor provocations could push him into explosive rages. He threatened classmates with scissors, placed 2 girls in headlocks on separate occasions, and caused them considerable harm. He became a source of fear among his peers, yet he was typically dismissed as someone else's issue. By early 2019, social workers had no choice but to act. Hassan was found abandoned at home. His mother was fatigued and devastated, saying she could no longer handle him. She packed his possessions and gave him over to foster care. In foster care, Hassan's gloom increased. He struggled to bond with his foster family, and his moods remained unpredictable. One foster mother later reported an incident where Hassan threatened to mutilate the household pet merely because she refused him something. In March of 2019, during a school trip, Hassan pulled a knife on a boy he claimed had insulted him, culminating in his expulsion from mainstream schooling. He was placed in a pupil referral unit, where his aggressiveness continued. He slapped professors, spat at workers, and struck numerous kids. Every warning indicator was apparent, yet no one intervened. Hassan was later diagnosed with autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, and conduct disorder, a combination of disorders that did not justify his increasing behavior. By late 2020, he was relocated to a special needs school, but again, the wrath continued. In May of 2021, a care plan was prepared to allow him to live with his mother again, but the cycle of violence persisted. Within a year, the police was summoned back to his residence. Hassan had imprisoned himself inside his room, splashing washing up liquid across the walls in a furious fit of wrath. By then, Hassan had matured into a young man with a lengthy history of violence, untreated trauma, and a hair-trigger anger. The symptoms were clear. Hassan was on the brink of snapping and may very possibly take someone's life. Yet nobody properly intervened. Before long, he enrolled in a sports science course at Cuddon College. On the surface, it looked he was constructing a new life for himself, but in truth, nothing had changed. His behavior continued unregulated, and his mental health needs were mostly unmet. The violence inside him simmered, until exploding on the 27th of September, 2023. After stabbing Elianne in the neck, paramedics came within minutes, but as noted previously, the harm had already been done. The police were notified of the attack, with the culprit escaping on foot while brandishing the knife. Hassan managed to escape the scene and wound up on a random street, where he nonchalantly dropped the bloodied 12-inch kitchen knife into the front garden of a random house, a casual attempt to dispose a weapon that had terminated a life. From that point onward, he continued as if nothing had happened. He boarded the 130 bus and then transferred to the 64 route, following the same trip he had taken countless times before. However, luck was not on his side. The police were tracking his every step. When he walked off the bus, he was noticed by a local cop who had already been warned. Bodycam footage showed the moment he was ultimately detained. Hassan was sweating and cornered. He panicked and offered a bogus name, denying any involvement in the savage crime he had perpetrated less than an hour earlier. During the arrest, numerous other officers came. At this moment, the arresting officer was notified that Elianne had died, and Hassan was now being detained for murder. Hassan was taken into prison and later interviewed. Almost the next few days, the cops labored diligently, sifting through almost 45 hours of CCTV material. The proof was clear as day. The CCTV showed him slashing an innocent girl in the throat. However, the tape did not show the reasoning behind his acts. The leap from a teddy bear argument to murder was simply a result of Hassan's white-hot wrath. Even while on remand, Hassan's violent side continued to surface. Another inmate accused him of killing Elianne, to which Hassan yelled back, "I'll do it again. I'll kill your mom. I'll do the same thing to her." The trial was soon to commence, and Hassan's case was so terrible that it was instantly moved to adult court despite his age. On the 3rd of October, 2023, he made his first appearance at the Old Bailey. The hearing was brief. Hassan sat flanked by officers, staring blankly ahead while members of Elianne's shattered family sat just feet away. Reports indicated that he displayed little remorse on the day of his plea hearing. On the 14th of March, 2024, Hassan refused to acknowledge to murder, pleading not guilty instead. He entered a guilty plea to manslaughter, attempting to establish that he killed Elianne but had not intended to. He claimed lessened culpability owing to his autism. Nonetheless, prosecutors promptly rejected the manslaughter plea. They maintained that the killing was cold, calculated, and vicious, insisting it was murder and that they would prove it before a jury. Hassan remained in detention throughout the pre-trial process. No bail was provided or even considered. He had to await justice from behind bars. The trial formally began at the Old Bailey in late 2024. Prosecutors laid out a terrifying case, proving that Hassan had carried a 12-inch kitchen knife from home after an argument over a teddy bear and later used it in a savage attack on Elianne. The CCTV tape showed him chasing and stabbing her in broad daylight. Witnesses, including his ex-girlfriend, claimed that Hassan had gotten violent after Elianne jokingly snatched his luggage. She recalled that he appeared wearing black gloves and a mask, thinking his costume odd and out of character. Just like the CCTV, she claimed witnessing him draw the knife and rush at Elianne, stabbing her repeatedly as she lay motionless on the street. The prosecution proved strongly that this was definitely a premeditated act. Hassan's attempts to run, throw the weapon, and lie to the police revealed a definite knowledge of guilt. For the defense, a mental expert testified that Hassan's autism rendered him prone to emotional outbursts and hampered his capacity to behave logically in high-conflict situations. The defense maintained that his mental condition considerably impacted his judgment that day. Notably, Hassan did not take the witness stand in his own defense, declining to offer evidence, which meant the jury never heard directly from him. Instead, the defense relied primarily on expert testimony, alleging that he was a neurodivergent youngster who had been overloaded and had snapped. Thankfully, the prosecution destroyed this argument during cross-examination, pointing out that Hassan had the presence of mind to arm himself in advance, flee away, and attempt to conceal the weapon after the stabbing. These behaviors revealed clear control rather than a thoughtless meltdown. After both sides presented their cases, the jury had to determine whether Hassan had committed murder or a lesser penalty of manslaughter. The jury began deliberating on the 14th of January, 2025, and lasted into the next day. On the 16th of January, the jury returned its verdict. Hassan was found guilty of murder at the age of 18. He faced a mandatory life sentence. Reporting limitations were eased, allowing the media to name him publicly as Elianne's killer. Her family sobbed at the verdict but expressed satisfaction that justice had been achieved. On the 13th of March, 2025, Hassan returned to the Old Bailey to learn his fate. Elianne's family was present, offering poignant victim impact statements. They described the heartbreaking loss of a bright, smart, kind girl who had dreamed of becoming a lawyer to help others. Hassan sat with his head lowering, making no personal declarations of regret and expressing no true contrition. Ultimately, Hassan was sentenced to a minimum term of 23 years before he could be considered for parole. This means he will spend decades behind bars and will not be eligible for release until at least 2046, and even then, release will only occur if the parole board believes he no longer poses a danger. Elianne's death spurred bigger conversations around Cuddon and London. Her name has become a symbol of both heartbreaking loss and enduring resilience. Her death remains as a stark reminder of how delicate life is and how swiftly it may be taken away.